Go ahead. Say hi to Liam.
Hi, Liam.
We miss you.
We miss you. Please come back. I hope.
All right, I should have you guys know way earlier. Okay, so we are talking about moving west. Yesterday, what did we talk about, Kiera?
We talked about patents, steamboats, railroads.
That was last chapter, just yesterday. What did we talk about, Jacob?
Mexican War.
The Mexican War. So Mexico wanted to have people move into their land. So they sold their land for very cheap and Americans came over. And then what did Mexico make them do? Cameron?
They made them come into only the church and
Right.
follow their rules.
They made them follow their rules, and some of the Americans did not want to give up that freedom, so they made an agreement, and it was written in the Mexican Constitution that the Americans that came over could basically rule themselves. They could have their own rules. They did not have to join the Catholic Church. But then a general became president of Mexico, and he did not like that. What was his name, Deacon? Santa Anna. And he decided that he was going to force them to obey his rules. Well, the people who were in that land that we now call Texas did not like that. So then they decided to fight against Santa Anna. Santa Anna said, I will make you obey or else. So the people got together and they put a fort in an old church. And what was the name of that, Boaz?
The Alamo.
The Alamo. They realized they didn't have enough people or weapons, so they sent a message. Did the message get there in time?
No.
It did not. And because of that, Wells, what happened? Elijah.
I think she died.
Not just she. Who died? Parker? You're along the right trail. All of the people in the Alamo died because they said, okay, we give up, but what did Santa Anna do? They all have to die.
They captured them and then
They killed them all. So then somebody finally came, and he was a Texas general. He was the commander of the Texan Army. What was his name, Maisie? Sam Houston. He came and he fought Santa Anna out of battle. And who won that battle? Sam Houston won that battle. Did he kill all of the Mexican soldiers? No. He said, I will let you go if you do what?
Stop fighting. Give us access.
Give us the land. So then Texas became an independent country. Okay, please don't do that. I'm sure your mom doesn't want that. So now we're going to talk about a different movement. So that was how America grew in that area. Because remember, how many years was Texas an independent country?
9.
Awesome. It was 9 years, and then after that, it became part of America. So we're going to talk about the moving of the West. I'm sure you've all heard about the Oregon Trail. When I was little, I told you I wasn't allowed to watch TV. Computers were just becoming more popular. Maggie put that on my desk. They're just becoming more popular, so I had a game, it was called the Oregon Trail Computer Game. And then lately, this Oregon Trail Computer Game has now come back. This was way before the time of Nintendos and Xboxes and all that thing. And basically, the Oregon Trail, put your hands down, the Oregon Trail was you had to buy supplies, you had to make sure you had enough supplies, and you couldn't get sick. And you had to follow the different paths of the trail that the people would follow. Now, they now have a card game called the Oregon Trail. And if you made it to the end with most of your party, that means most of the people in your wagon, and you still had food, then you would survive. So while that was a game that people played, it actually kind of was a history lesson because the Oregon Trail was a really difficult journey. People, for all kinds of different reasons we're going to learn about, decided to move west. Land, adventure, trapping. Pretty soon they're going to find gold in California. They wanted to move west. Who remembers the first people that explored the west after the Louisiana Purchase? Boaz?
Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark. So they kind of, Elijah, paved the way. And then after that, the next people that we remember really are the missionaries. They wanted to go and spread the gospel to the Indians that were out there. because they realized that these Indians might never have heard of God before. So they went out and they helped other pioneers. Can you say that word?
Pioneer.
Say it again.
Pioneer.
So a pioneer was a person who left their land and traveled to a new, pretty much unknown land. They're different from an immigrant because the pioneers were still in the same country. And also, they weren't leaving their land and traveling to a new land, so to speak, an uninhabited land. The immigrants were coming to already established cities and towns. But pioneers were doing something new. They were forging a new path. That's why they were called pioneers. So Marcus and Narcissa Whitman were some of the first pioneers. They went from the middle part of the United States all the way to what we now call Oregon. So I want you to look on your map, and I want you to find St. Joseph on your map. Point to it with the finger. What city is above St. Joseph? Parker? Parker, C? Council? Bluffs. And what two cities are below St. Joseph? Aaron? Kansas City and Independence. So all of those cities are on a what? Israel? All of those cities are on a what, Maggie?
A river.
They're on a river. Remember we talked about how most of the big cities were on rivers? So some of those, if you were in Kansas City, you might go up the river a little bit to get to the Oregon Trail. They would go as long on rivers as far as they could, because what they would do is they would float their wagons down the rivers instead of going over parts of the road. So those four cities were starting points, and you see where they all merged? I want you to follow your red line to the first stop. What is the first stop that you see? Kiara?
Independence Rock.
All right. Follow your line to the next stop. What's that stop, Nate?
Fort Hall.
All right. Follow your line all the way to Astoria. That is where the Whitmans stopped. The Whitmans were really nice people, because what they would do is that, go ahead, put your hand down, Grace. They would have a farm. So pioneers, by the time they got to the Oregon Trail and they landed in the valley of Oregon, where there was rich farmland, they could make their farms, they didn't have any food. So the Whitmans had a huge farm, and they would give food to the pioneers coming off the trail. They would also help the Indians. He was a doctor, so he was able to help the Indians in a way that nobody has ever helped them. But unfortunately, some of the Indians didn't trust them. When people move into an area, there's sickness and there's disease that spread, right? Have we experienced that here? Yes. Well, there's a sickness called the measles, and we all get shots for it now, so the measles don't spread, but it's very contagious. And if you leave it untreated, it can kill you sometimes. So that's why we have immunizations against it now. Put your hands down. But when Marcus and Narcissa Whitman were in Oregon, they had some sad things in their life happen. First, they had a daughter, and she drowned. She was only 2 years old, and she drowned. Remember we talking about Joseph? God works all things together for his good. That's kind of hard, right? So then, because of that, they took in 11 orphan children off of the pioneer train. Sometimes boys and girls would have, their parents would die on the trail, and they would have to go with another family. And then when they got to the Whitman's farm, then the Whitmans would take them in, because both of their parents had died along the trail. So they used the bad part of losing their daughter and turned it into good, because they took care of other boys and girls. But back to the measles story. So one day, measles came. I don't know if pioneers brought it. I don't know how it spread, but it's very contagious. So it spread and it spread and it spread. And it spread to the Indians. And the Indians were used to the way that they had lived. They didn't have doctors. They didn't have hospitals. And Marcus, he was a doctor. He tried to help them. He tried to heal them. But sometimes, no matter what you doesn't work, right? Our bodies all break apart eventually because there is sin in the world. That is a sad part of our sin. So Marcus would try to give them medicine, and it didn't work, and more Indians started to die. That made the Indians mad, and that made them not trust him. And so they went and they said, these white people are evil, and they are giving us medicine that's killing us. And they said, they're not helping us. So they went and killed Marcus and Narcissa Whitman. So these were missionaries who gave their lives for God. They were killed by the Indians. That's kind of sad, isn't it? Because they were just trying to help them. So there were more missionaries that came after them, Henry and Eliza Spalding, and they helped serve the Indians too. Eliza was a teacher, and so she would help teach the Indian children. Both of these places made schools. Up until then, the Indian children didn't learn to read and write because it wasn't their language. So then they started schools so they could teach the Indian children how to read books, how to read the Bible, and how to write. But when the Whitmans were killed, the army told the Spaldings that they had to leave because it wasn't safe. So they ended up leaving. Henry came back years later and ministered to them. And when he came back, there were some Indians that accepted Jesus. And those Indians went and told other people about the Indians. And actually, there are still some of those Native Americans living in Oregon today who are descendants of those Indians that believed in Jesus when Henry Spalding told them. All right, the other thing I want you to do is follow that trail again. And this time, I want you to veer off the trail and find Salt Lake City. Put your finger on Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City. So, Salt Lake City is a little bit south of Oregon. This was established, put your hand on, kiddo. This was established by a group of people called the Mormons. So the Mormons were not Christian missionaries. The Mormon was a religion started by a person named Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith was the founder of the Mormons. Can you say that? Joseph Smith was the founder of the Mormons. Boys, say it loud.
Joseph Smith was the founder of the Mormons.
All right. Does the Bible have a founder? No. It does not. That's why I want to emphasize that Joseph Smith was the founder of the Mormons, because a religion shouldn't have a founder, right? Because there is only what? One true God. Well, Joseph Smith decided that he wanted to do his own things. And he said that he had a vision, and he wrote all about his vision, and he got people to believe him. We talked about this a couple of chapters ago. We had freedom of religion here in America, right? Which meant that people could choose. So some people chose to follow him. And they moved a little bit in the middle of the country, but still people didn't like them, and this is why. He was not a Christian. He did not obey the Bible. He made special rules for his church, and one of those rules were that people could have more than one wife. He said, it came to me in a dream, and this is the rule. Well, the New Testament part of the Bible talks about how that is against God's plan for us today. So he made his own rules. He wrote his own Bible, and people did not like that. So they would chase him and his followers out of his area. Well, one day, an angry mob killed Joseph Smith because they did not want him spreading his his ideas. So an angry mob killed Joseph Smith. But before he did that, Joseph Smith attacked a newspaper office. He and his followers attacked a newspaper office because they were printing things about Joseph Smith. So the two sides were fighting, and they went and killed, an angry mob killed Joseph Smith. So his followers said, we need to get out of here. Grace? A mob. That is an angry group of people. We call them a mob. Well, that's a great question, guys. A mob is an angry group of people. So, Smith had his followers destroy the newspaper office, and then the angry mob in the town said, we don't like what you're teaching, we don't like what you're preaching, we want you gone, and they killed Joseph Smith. So, another person, his name is Brigham Young, decided to take over this religion. He said, I have a vision and now I'm in charge. He just decided he was going to be in charge because he had a vision and people followed him. So, trace your finger along the trail again, all the way to Salt Lake. When the pioneers would travel, they would use wagons, and I'm going to show you a couple of videos about wagons, the Conestoga Wagons. The Mormon people were so poor they couldn't afford wagons. So they built basically wooden wheelbarrows. They called them hand carts. So it would probably be a little bit bigger than this desk. And they would push or pull those hand carts 1,000 miles.
What?
I wouldn't want to push a hand cart from here back to camp with all my stuff in it. Can you imagine that journey? All of your stuff in wheelbarrows with wooden wheels? What's going to happen?
It's just gonna break.
It's
And
just
you
going
have
to break,
Maggie.
Maggie. And then they had to fix it. Does that sound like an easy journey?
No.
No. But they went all the way over to the Great Salt Lake City. Why do you think that they went to that particular place? Boaz?
Because they wanted to go back to Salt Lake City.
But why? They didn't want to go back there. That's not where they were from. That's where they were going. But why did they go to Salt Lake City? That was close to the desert. Cameron?
Because it was warm there and it had like a lot of water and it had more land.
There was land, but there was also not a lot of something else. Where's everybody else going? Deacon?
The missionary. Australia.
The other people are going to Oregon. So why do you think they went to Salt Lake City?
Because there aren't any missionaries.
Because not just missionaries, there weren't a lot of people. Remember what happened to their first founder, Joseph Young?
He got killed.
He was killed because people didn't like how he practiced his religion. So he went to Salt Lake. They went to Salt Lake City so people would leave them alone. There are still Mormons in this country today, and most of them are in that Salt Lake City area. They still do not believe in the one true God. They have changed their rules a little bit, but there are still Mormons out there. All right, go ahead and look at page 195. That is a covered wagon. That is a cross cut so that you can see inside the covered wagon. Just turn the page, bud.
What?
So, if you were going on the Oregon Trail, think about all the things that could go wrong with your covered wagon.
Your stuff could break in there if it bumps on
Your stuff could break. What else? Jacob, I love how you raised your hand.
It can tip over.
It could tip over. Cameron,
Your stuff could fall into the river.
your stuff could fall into the river because these rivers weren't gentle streams. Row, row, row your boat. They were rushing rivers. We read a reading story about somebody crossing the river.
I know it's about England.
Abe Lincoln crossing the river. All right, what else could go wrong in this journey for thousands of miles? Maisie,
Their wagons could get stuck in the mud, or the wheels could fall off.
the wheels would break. Their wagons could get stuck in the mud. Kiara.
Someone could place TNT next to it and then.
Nope, that's not a problem that they have. Ignite. People could get sick. That was a big problem that they would have. Parker?
You could run out of food.
They would run out of food. Is there a lot of space in that wagon?
No.
No. Is there a lot of stops along the way?
No.
Did you remember when we had those stops? There was much oxen were the only thing strong enough. But if you look inside, is there room for people? No. So what did the people have to do? They had to make camp, and I'm gonna show you a video after recess about that. So the cool thing I want to tell you about the Conestoga Wagon, or the wagon, is many wagons were made by a company called the Conestoga Wagon Company. And I know you guys are so lucky to live in this part of Pennsylvania because there is so much history here. Conestoga wagons were made in this area. What? Did you know that? This area is called the Conestoga Valley. So a lot of Conestoga wagons that went across the rivers and across the mountains from Oregon were here. Now, there is a place in Reading, it's pretty cool. It's called the Berks History Center, or the Berks Historical Center. I don't know if it's open right now. That's awesome. But there is a Conestoga wagon in their basement. They have a cool room where kids can go and explore life in the colonial times, and there is a Conestoga wagon in their basement that came from this area. And actually, they're pretty cool when you get to stand next to it. Deacon. Not right now. All right. Hold on a second. I want you to open up your activity booklets to page 102. Open up your books to activity page 102. Maisie. Cameron. Yes. A lot of people live in that area now. It's not just the Mormons. 102.
When you said Conestoga Wagons, the first thing that I remembered was my mom telling me that she worked at Conestoga School.
Yes, because this is called the Conestoga Valley, there's a lots of things named after the valley. Maggie.
There's a book called Little House on the Prairie, and they have a wagon.
All right. Yes, the Little House on the Prairie was about a trip. All right, Liam, I'm going to end this now. Hope to see you soon. We miss you, bud.
We love you.
Bye.